It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. An apology from one of the central characters in the post office scandal, but frustration from victims at her performance at the public inquiry.
I don't actually remember. I'm not sure exactly. I can't recall. I didn't remember, and there are things I will have forgotten.
I can't accept her apology because an apology cannot bring back the time that you've lost.
Scotland's First Minister on the brink as he faces possible defeat in a no-confidence vote next week. A court overturns the rape conviction of ex-movie mogul Harvey Weinstein, undoing a legal foundation stone of the Me Too movement. A 13-year-old girl is charged with attempted murder after two teachers and a pupil were stabbed at a school in Wales. Labour's plan to get the railways back on track, but will it mean better services or lower fares?
Knock knock.
Who's that?
Interrupting Carol.
Moo.
And is humour the best medicine? The Prince of Wales speaks out about children's mental health. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. Every drama needs a villain, and in Mr Bates versus the Post Office, the programme which put the Horizon IT scandal top of the political agenda, one of the key antagonists was Angela van den Boogaard, former head of partnerships for the Post Office. Reality is rarely so black and white, and today the real person faced the spotlight to give a performance in front of the public inquiry, which lacked the polish and verve of the ITV scriptwriters, repeatedly insisting that she couldn't remember key specific details. She apologised for the devastation caused to wrongly convicted sub-postmasters, but insisted that she never knowingly did anything wrong. Sky's Adele Robinson has this report.
Their lives broken by the Post Office, and now time for answers. Or that's what was hoped.
Excuse me, thank you very much.
No comment from Angela van den Boogaard on the way in.
The evidence I shall give
Shall be the truth.
shall be the truth.
But inside, plenty from the woman described as the Post Office executive who knew the most about the Horizon scandal.
I'm truly, truly sorry for the devastation caused to you, your family and friends.
It was a moment former sub-postmasters have waited years for, but which they refused to accept because of this.
Firstly, I think you make no concessions or admissions that you did anything wrong, correct?
Well, I didn't knowingly do anything wrong, and I would never knowingly do anything wrong.
Angela van den Boogaard was portrayed in the ITV drama as one of the main villains.
There were shortcomings in the user experience.
It's clunky, would be the word I would use.
Chirag met her in 2018 asking for a review of his case.
So she said the words to you, money doesn't have legs.
Money doesn't have legs. It's got to go somewhere.
He paid a £57,000 shortfall in his branch and lost his business.
The culture of denial is phenomenal with her.
What did you make of her apology?
I can't accept her apology because an apology cannot bring back the time that you've lost.
She worked for the Post Office for 3 decades, but her memory failed at several key moments.
I don't actually remember. I'm not sure exactly. I can't recall. I didn't remember, and there are things I will have forgotten.
Did you forget about this email too?
One of them from 2010, potentially the first time she was made aware of the possibility Horizon systems could be accessed remotely.
Are you saying you airbrushed it from your mind?
Well, I don't remember even seeing it. So, and that's what I struggle with, because...
Well, maybe we struggle with it too. Is what truly happening here is that you're telling us that you don't recall it because you know that the email of the 5th of December 2010 presents you with a problem?
No, not at all.
Mark Kelly was watching. He says from the evidence she should have picked up on issues earlier.
Before Horizon, there used to be about 1 to 3 prosecutions a year. After post-Horizon, it went up down to about 1 a week. So that sort of set an alarm bell.
But she did recognise there had been signs.
and as far back as 2004, describing one case as an early rumbling. But there was some shifting of blame. She said that there were others party to the same information, insisting that she wasn't trying to cover it up.
This was just the start for Angela van den Boogaard,
Has your memory failed you, ma'am?
who will face more questions and post office victims on day 2.
Well, Adele joins me now, and arguably this was the most significant day for sub-postmasters of this inquiry so far, with another day of testimony from her tomorrow.
Yeah, day 2 tomorrow, more forensic questioning expected to try to get to the bottom of exactly what her role was in all of this. You're right, though, the biggest day so far for sub-postmasters, because this was somebody who wasn't just involved in the mediation group, which was set up to help sub-postmasters to look into horizon errors. It was also, for the people that I've spoken to, most of them actually dealt with her directly, whether or not that was on the phone, by email or in person in meetings. And there was quite a lot of frustration from sub-postmasters today, as well as you could tell from the KC, Jason Beer, especially when she was trying to push responsibility onto Fujitsu, for example, saying that they were not as transparent as they should have been. He was even asking her questions like, what did you actually do? He said to her that, you know, you weren't involved in briefings, you weren't involved in IT, according to yourself, you weren't involved in the provision of information. The list went on. So he said, you know, what were you actually doing at this time? So that's what we'll see continue on tomorrow. Looking at the documents, examining those, the information that she had and the dates, trying to build a picture up of what she knew and when, which is essential, really, isn't it, to answer the question of whether or not there was a cover-up. She says there wasn't.
Adele, thank you. Now, the future of the SNP leader, Humza Yousaf, is in the balance after the Scottish Greens said it will join with rival MSPs to back a no-confidence motion in the First Minister next week. Mr Yousaf announced his plans to cut ties with the Greens in an emergency cabinet earlier, following a row over climate targets. Here's our Scotland correspondent, Conor Gillis.
He arrived denying he's a lame duck leader.
The Butte House Agreement was intended to provide stability, but it has served its purpose. It's no longer guaranteeing a stable arrangement.
They say a week is a long time in politics, but this was just 5 days ago.
We've achieved a lot together in government. I want to keep achieving a lot with the Green Party.
You said that this was a partnership worth its weight in gold. Is it not fair for your critics to suggest you are not a First Minister in control and you're not a First Minister calling the shots?
What this shows is leadership. What it shows is the ability for me is to decide to take control of our priority agenda and priority focus.
I'm absolutely delighted to confirm.
It came with fanfare in 2021, the pro-independence arrangement led by Nicola Sturgeon. Now it's binned. Humza Yousaf leading a minority administration.
The agreement sealed behind these doors brought much needed stability for the SNP, passing key votes and budgets. But there's no doubt there has been growing unease among both sides. The Greens unhappy at ditching key climate targets and the row over gender reforms. They themselves were planning a vote on the pact in the next couple of weeks. So is there a sense that Humza Yousaf was trying to get on the front foot?
But has it backfired? A government hit with incoming jeopardy.
Presiding officer, I can confirm today that on behalf of the Scottish Conservatives, I am lodging a vote of no confidence in Humza Yousaf.
And for the sacked Greens, the gloves are off, threatening to cause political trouble.
The Scottish Green MSPs have decided that we will support a vote of no confidence in the First Minister.
Our support for Humza Yousaf becoming First Minister was on the basis of the political cooperation agreement which both parties' members signed in good faith, which Humza Yousaf endorsed, and even 2 days ago was still endorsing. He's now chosen to end that. That's his decision, and it can't come without consequences.
The casting vote and power may now rest with Ash Regan, the one-time SNP leadership candidate who defected to Alex Salmond's Alba party.
If Humza Yousaf was a horse, I wouldn't be backing him in a race at the present moment. He's got just a few days to save his political career. Now, you'll get that opportunity. The Alba party, Ash Regan, will write him a letter setting out her concerns and priorities for the Parliament, and Humza's future will depend on his response to that letter.
If Humza Yousaf loses the opposition plot to oust him, the SNP will be forced to reopen their leadership wounds or call an election. Painful for a party beginning the day aiming to take control now, once again, in a perilous position. Conor Gillis, Sky News, Edinburgh.
Harvey Weinstein's 2020 rape conviction was a landmark moment in the Me Too movement. Now, a New York court has overturned the conviction, finding the disgraced movie producer did not receive a fair trial. One of the victims called it an institutional betrayal. Our US correspondent Mark Stone reports.
It was the downfall of one of Hollywood's most powerful men, the foundational case of the movement that became known as Me Too. Jail for one of the film world's most recognizable faces, closure for victims, secured with his conviction for felony sex crimes. It was a moment of relief for feeling that justice was possible. But his lawyers always said that they would appeal, and so they did, and they won.
The law was not applied fairly to Harvey Weinstein. And what the Court of Appeals, the highest court in the greatest state, in the greatest country, said today is that yes, no one is above the law, but no one is below the law either.
It is a stunning reversal by New York's highest appeals court, a 4-3 majority concluding that the judge in the case made crucial errors by allowing prosecution testimony from witnesses whose sexual allegations were not part of the case itself. The trial was not fair, they concluded. The most high-profile of those who had come forward early on, actor Ashley Judd, she spoke now for so many women.
4 judges at New York's court have voted to overturn Harvey Weinstein's sexual crimes conviction. This is what it's like to be a woman in America, living with male entitlement to our bodies.
For so long in Hollywood circles, there had been suspicion about Weinstein. And with this case, women were emboldened to come forward, one after the other.
All right, hello, Melissa Thompson.
One alleged victim, Melissa Thompson, spoke exclusively to Sky News in 2018.
Okay, he's hugging me. What do I do now? I was sensing I have to be a little bit more vigilant of this situation than I originally thought.
Someone has a flirt with you?
Harvey Weinstein has denied all non-consensual sexual contact. New York's District Attorney Alvin Bragg has said that he will pursue a retrial. But for now, Weinstein remains in prison for another California sex-related conviction.
A lot of us felt that we were on a road to seeing a different America. And this moment makes it feel like we were wrong.
It was the conviction that galvanized the Me Too movement. But now it is the testimony of witnesses who said Me Too, which have unravelled a painful and pivotal case. Mark Stone, Sky News.
Labour today promised to deliver the biggest shake-up of the railways in a generation, putting what it called a broken model back on track towards public ownership. They did, however, shy away from using the word renationalisation. So let's look at how things would change under Labour's plan. Under the current rail structure, the government oversees 2 major areas. It funds Network Rail and issues licences to franchise companies. Network Rail maintains and develops the infrastructure, things like the tracks and stations, and the franchises are train companies which operate in different regions. They're also responsible for services like freight and devolved train operating companies. Well, under the plan being proposed by Labour, the government would oversee Great British Railways, an umbrella organisation that would be operationally independent of the department. All train companies would be nationalised progressively as their current contracts expire. Maintenance of rail infrastructure would also come under GBR. Rolling stock, though, would remain private and be leased by Great British Railways. Freight would also stay private, but GBR would take over management of contracts. This will change how the railways are funded. Currently, passengers pay fares to train companies. The train companies pay fees to the Department for Transport, which in turn subsidises their shortfalls. Well, operators also pay access charges to Network Rail. The department gives money to Network Rail as well for maintenance of the system. Under the new plan, all that money from passenger fares and government spending goes straight to Great British Railways. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
On track for a fundamental change in the way the train system is run. Labour vowing to reverse 30 years of private ownership.
Louise.
Within 5 years, the Labour politician who wants to run our transport network says privately operated train companies will be a thing of the past.
Labour will sweep away the broken model and bring private operators into public ownership as their contracts expire. We will establish Great British Railways, a single directing mind to control our railways in the passenger interest.
How are you going to make sure that you don't end up falling into the same old trap as British Railways, where effectively, to get train upgrades, you are competing for cash with schools and hospitals?
Obviously, we are in a very constrained public spending environment. There is no doubt about that. But the reforms we're setting out today will deliver significant efficiencies and cost savings for the taxpayer. We think we will save the taxpayer as much as £2.2 billion every year.
Have you got an agreement from Rachel Reeves that your savings, your efficiencies, can all be channelled back into the railways?
We would hope that we would reinvest some of those savings. We've not got agreement that all of it would be.
Those rail companies now facing the axe still insist they can do a better job.
If you look at the track record of private sector operators since the mid-90s, actually they've delivered huge amounts of innovation and also investment. £14 billion has been injected into the industry, mostly on new trains. Passenger numbers has doubled.
It was the Tories in the 1990s who abolished the publicly owned British Rail. Those with longer memories are more cautious.
I can remember when it wasn't private, and I think they're both awful.
Something needs to change, this chopping and changing from one region to the next, from one supplier set. It must be costing a fortune.
Passengers want more trains, better trains, less disruption, and feel let down. But all of that is going to take more money that isn't going to come from the private sector. But will the state really do any better? The Tories say it's all anti-business.
It's going to be taking more companies into public ownership. It's going to mean hiring more civil servants to run them. I don't think that's very sensible. You can't do that and then say that you support the private sector, which is what Labour's trying to say.
No one wants more delays, but Labour already warning the system won't improve overnight. Passengers have already been waiting a very long time. Sam Coates, Sky News.
Lack of trust in politics and voter apathy are big issues in any election year. And right now, they're particularly acute in the north of England. There, according to an exclusive Sky News YouGov poll, 86% of voters think politicians don't care about them. Tonight, Sky News hosted politicians and a focus group of disillusioned voters in our target town constituency of Grimsby and Cleethorpes. Serena Barker-Singh has this report.
Grimsby, a town where the majority voted to leave the EU in 2016, an election battleground and a Sky News target town. Last election, the constituency turned Tory for the first time since the Second World War, and with that change came promises.
We will work round the clock to repay your trust.
But 5 years on, it's that trust that may have run out. An exclusive Sky News poll reveals something quite worrying. The number of people who say they almost never trust British governments to put the needs of the nation above interests of their own party has nearly doubled, from 26% to 49%. In a Politics Hub special from the town, voters reflected the statistics.
What do you reckon, Keir Starmer?
Uninteresting automaton.
There you go. Keir Starmer?
I don't know what to say.
Rishi Sunak?
Positive.
Performative.
Too safe.
When we asked whether people thought politicians would rather fight each other than further the public interest, 84% of people said they agreed.
If you have that kind of leadership based on charisma, then you risk really upsetting within the local party.
When you talk about chaos, there is no chaos going on in the Conservative Party.
And I was going to come on to it, sorry, I was. But I was interrupted, which I think is another thing that people don't really like about politics.
When we asked how much do politicians care about people like you, the vast majority, 83%, said not very much at all.
That's the thing about Grimsby. No one does care about us. And at the end of the day, you can vote for any politician, but when they start caring about us, maybe we'll care back.
Anyone here change their mind on how they're going to vote or be more persuaded to vote after what they heard tonight?
No.
No. There you go.
With the show over, voters left unconvinced.
It's going to take a much more fundamental change in politicians' behaviour before I'm convinced that they are trustworthy.
I can't say this evening's changed my view of politicians, no.
All parties will soon unveil their promises through their manifestos, but the battle may be whether voters believe what's inside them and whether it's apathy that wins here overall. Serena Buck-Singh, Sky News.
Donald Trump squeezed in a bit of campaigning ahead of the resumption of his hush money trial today, but perhaps of more lasting potential significance was the start of a hearing in the Supreme Court, which could decide whether he should be immune from prosecution over his efforts to reverse his 2020 election defeat. Well, our US correspondent James Matthews is in Washington, outside the Supreme Court. President should be immune, according to Mr. Trump, James. So how did the arguments stack up today?
We'll find out for sure, Anna, when they issue their ruling. That could take us to the end of June. But you get a sense in the Supreme Court from questions asked, discussions had between judges and lawyers of the way the wind is blowing, how they are thinking. It appears that they don't quite buy the argument of full immunity for Donald Trump, but they did seem to lean towards a degree of immunity in official acts, the official acts of a president. If they now go to the trial court in Washington, D.C. and say, look, you sort out the line. Where is the line between official acts and the acts of a private citizen? That could take some time, and that could further delay a trial that was scheduled to start on the 4th of March. This is all about January the 6th. Donald Trump is accused of election subversion and involvement in the January the 6th Capitol riots. This is at the serious end of the criminal jeopardy, the legal jeopardy that he faces. So very serious stuff. If he is, or if this process is delayed further, that's what Donald Trump wants. He wants it delayed as far into the future as he possibly can have it, close to the November election. Of course, the way the timetable is shaping up, if there is further delay, it will be tight, squeezing it in between now and November. And if he can get it past November, win that election, then of course, as president, he can use the power of office to make it all go away.
James, at the US Supreme Court, thank you. A 13-year-old girl has been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder following a stabbing incident at a school in Wales. Dyfed and Paris police said the teenager was charged after 2 teachers and a teenage pupil were stabbed at Amman Valley School yesterday. All 3 have now been released from hospital. Lawrence Fox has said he intends to appeal after he was ordered to pay £180,000 in damages. The actor-turned-politician called former Stonewall trustee Simon Blake and drag artist Crystal paedophiles during a row on social media in 2020. The ruling comes after he lost a libel case against them earlier this year. A Royal Navy warship has shot down a missile launched by an Iranian-backed Houthi group targeting a merchant vessel in the Gulf of Aden. HMS Diamond downed the missile using its Sea Viper anti-air missile system, captured in this footage in January after a similar attack. And 2 military horses, which bolted through central London yesterday, have undergone surgery for their injuries and remain in a serious condition. The Army says it is too early to say if they will return to duty after they were spooked by construction noise and collided with vehicles. Shoplifting in England and Wales has risen to its highest level in 20 years, according to the latest crime statistics. The numbers were up by more than a third on last year, with the figures showing that 90% of all crimes go unsolved. Our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire reports.
If scenes like this feel more and more common, it's because they really are. More than 1,000 shoplifting crimes were recorded every day in England and Wales last year, the highest number on record, according to the latest crime statistics. Even genteel, leafy Chiswick, West London, has seen a surge in shoplifting since the pandemic. Camby's owns this boutique and had to chase off shoplifters earlier this year.
I've been here for around 41 years, and I've never had seen it this bad.
This is the worst it's been?
This is really the worst.
Well, Campese is right. It is the highest on record, and it is a really big jump, up here more than a third since last year. Now, the government believes the recent rise is down to organised criminality. That may be true, but it really predates this. Look at this. Back in 2014, if you look at that, it was more likely that a shoplifting crime would be prosecuted. Since then, only 20% of shoplifting crimes get charged or summoned. So it is perhaps no wonder that people's perception is that crime has increased over recent years. 76% of us over here believe things are getting worse. Now, the reason these lines are different is because the question has slightly changed. We don't have to worry too much about that. It is comparable. But ever since the late 90s, really, a majority of us have believed that crime is getting worse. Here's the thing, though. It's not getting worse, according to the Crime Survey, which samples the public and is regarded as the best measure. 1995 over here, well, that was the peak, and it's been going down ever since. In fact, crime is now at an all-time low. So why doesn't it feel like it?
To some degree, when people feel that crime is rising, maybe it is, and maybe in their patch it is. The thing about crime rates and crime levels, they're not evenly spread across the country. There are going to be some neighbourhoods, some parts of town where that crime is deeply concentrated, and the experience actually objectively is these streets do not feel safe.
This is one of those places where they feel it is deeply concentrated. And the danger is that perception reinforces reality. According to YouGov polling, the majority of people now don't believe the police will deal with crime. And it seems like criminals, especially shoplifters, believe the same. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Chiswick, West London.
The Prince of Wales provided a royal surprise today, turning up at a West Midlands school to meet a pupil who wrote a personal letter to him about mental health. But there were one or two lighter moments too, with the Prince revealing his favourite joke. Here's our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills.
Freddie Hadley had written to Prince William. Him actually turning up was still a shock, even if he wasn't going to let on.
Yeah, thank you for your letter.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Did you think you'd get a response like that?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Yeah, good. I like that.
At only 12, he set up a mental health group for boys in his school. And his letter obviously had an impact.
I couldn't get my head around it because I'm meeting Prince William, the future king. It's insane, really. We wanted to do it so young males around the age between 9 and the age that I am, wanted to make them feel comfortable and know what they can do to get their expressions and emotions out freely to other people.
What they wanted William to talk about on their radio show was a bit less serious.
I am here with the gang here talking about male mental health, and I've been asked to produce a dad joke. I'm going to say a joke that is Charlotte's favourite joke at the moment that she keeps telling me. I'll do that instead. Knock knock.
Who's that?
Interrupting cow.
Interrupting
moo. That's what I hear a lot at home at the moment.
All 3 stops in the Midlands were around mental health, a long-held passion for him and the princess. Even with this kind of welcome, he is probably being more cautious at the moment over what he's sharing, balancing his public role with protecting his family's privacy. Professor Richard Simcott from the Macmillan Cancer Charity told me it is a hard juggle helping a loved one through cancer, whoever you are.
If the Prince is willing to talk about the mental health and emotional challenges, I can only hope that that will lead to people who, realising that they need help, reaching out and getting the
William kept saying how much Kate would have loved to be here. We don't know how long she's going to be away, but her decision to talk about her cancer diagnosis continues to have its own impact. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News in Birmingham.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the columnist for the Belfast Telegraph, Alison Morris, and the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons. Welcome to both of you. And certainly among the stories we will be discussing, this on the front of the Daily Mail. Its headline, Thieves Hit Shops 1,000 times a day. Plenty more on that and the other stories, of course, when we come back. Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, a reminder of our top stories this evening. One of the Post Office executives apologises but claims she never knowingly did anything wrong at the inquiry into the Post Office Horizon scandal. Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf is fighting to keep his job following his decision to pull out of the power-sharing agreement with the Greens. And New York's highest court has overturned Harvey Weinstein's rape conviction, finding the disgraced movie producer did not receive a fair trial. Well, hello there, watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the columnist for the Belfast Telegraph, Alison Morris, and the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons. Welcome to both of you, with us from now until just before midnight, I know. So to the front pages then, kicking off with The Guardian. It covers questions over the future of the SNP leader Humza Yousaf after the Scottish Greens said it will join with rival MSPs to back a no-confidence motion in the First Minister. Ireland's Deputy Prime Minister has complained that migrants are heading to his country instead of the UK as a result of the Rwanda bill. That's the Telegraph's top story. The Metro reporting on a New York appeal court's decision to overturn one of Harvey Weinstein's rape convictions. University academics will be vetted by security services as part of government plans to tackle Chinese spying, reports The Times. World's first jab to stop skin cancer brings hope for patients. That is the Eye's headline on what could be a game-changing melanoma treatment. Attacks on staff at shops have doubled, with offences soaring by a third, according to figures in the Daily Mail. Mining giant BHP's £31 billion bid for Anglo-American stirs disputes among investors, reports the Financial Times. The Mirror has launched a campaign to save FA Cup replays. The Sun reports Manchester United football legend Ryan Giggs is set to become a father again at the age of 50. Well, don't forget, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out those front pages while you listen to our guests. So let's head straight to Alison and to Jake. Welcome to both of you. Kicking off with The Guardian, it's on the front of the Telegraph as well. Scottish politics, Jake, in disarray.
That's right. I mean, this is like seeing the slow-motion collapse, certainly of Humza Yousaf's career, I think, and possibly of the SNP as well. So it started yesterday when he collapsed the Green power-sharing deal, which backfired when the Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross tabled a no-confidence motion in him, which then meant that the balance of power lay with the Alba Party. They have only one MSP, Ash Regan, who holds the deciding vote over the fate of Humza Yousaf. And that, her decision is going to really hinge on how he is able to roll back from his pro-trans stance. She's quite feminist and implementing the Caste report in Scotland. And also his commitment, or otherwise, to Scottish independence, which has sort of hit the rocks recently. So really dangerous times for Humza Yousaf. And to me, it just seems like the Labour Party in Scotland, and indeed in Westminster, is going to be rubbing their hands together with glee, because the collapse of the SNP means big gains for Labour with a general election coming up.
I mean, this is fascinating because it rolls in all the issues we've been talking about recently, whether it's net zero, pulling back from some of their commitments, whether it's the trans rights and self-identity issues, which we've heard so much about, all comes into focus. Just reading, actually, sources close to the First Minister have told Sky News he is not resigning and is coming out fighting. So it could be that this no-confidence action is as early as, Tuesday was the suggestion. Yeah. It could be really interesting to see how close this will be, Alison.
He may have no choice, and he is less than a year in the job. He only replaced Nicola Sturgeon less than a year ago, so he would be the shortest ever reigning Scottish First Minister. And then they have 28 days to replace him. If he does decide to go, he can hold on, but he's fatally damaged. Once there's a motion of no confidence, no leader in history has managed to hold on for any significant period of time after such a motion of no confidence. They all end up going very shortly after this. So you can see that he is under serious trouble. Obviously doing away with that deal that Nicola Sturgeon had made with the Greens in 2021, he might have thought was a good move in the circumstances, but as Jake has said, it's spectacularly backfired on him. And the next few days, I think, especially going into the start of next week, we will see whether he manages to hold on. But right now, it's looking like he's going to have to be replaced. And that could even spark another election. And with the SNP obviously doing quite poorly in the polls, that's something that clearly isn't ideal for the party at this particular time.
Yes, but they get 28 days, don't they, to find another leader should he find that the vote does not go with him next week. So this weird situation where the two women who stood against him for this position, Ash Reagan that you mentioned, and now with the Alex Salmond Party, and Kate Forbes as well, who's a possible successor, you know, holding quite an interesting position, aren't they, even though she's more socially conservative than the body of the SNP.
That's right, and of course let's not forget Nicola Sturgeon, who isn't doing anybody any favours for being in the news with the scandal of her own and of her husband. And so I think overall the perception to the public is this great sort of instability in the SNP, and combined with their failures to perform in terms of schools and public services in Scotland, all of which are doing very poorly indeed by comparison to those in England, I think generally speaking they're not going to be performing very well at the next election.
It's been quite a sort of cautionary tale, you know, not to base your whole party around this sort of presidential type leader, because once one person goes, then everything else below it starts to trickle away.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating because you might argue that Labour relied on Humza Yousaf not possibly performing as well as some might have expected for their own general election results. And if it comes back with a stronger SNP, for example, you know, it could have an impact on the UK-wide general election. Let's move on, shall we, to the Daily Telegraph. Right up your street, this, Alison. Rwanda threat is pouring migrants into Ireland. The Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland critical after 80% of asylum seekers arrive across the border from the UK.
Yeah, Micheál Martin has said that the Rwanda bill has sent migrants, a lot of them are mainly Nigerian, who are arriving in huge numbers into the south of Ireland. And a lot of them are coming across that open border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, believing that they have to move, obviously, to escape any chance of being deported to Rwanda. In effect, because of the Northern Ireland Protocol, that Brexit arrangement, the Rwanda bill doesn't apply to Northern Ireland, so nobody can be deported from Northern Ireland anyway, because the protocol takes primacy over all other domestic law, and it means that Northern Ireland remains within the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, and therefore asylum seekers are entitled to stay there and can't be deported to Rwanda. So you can see how Ireland, that island in itself, north and south, could become very attractive. And the knock-on effect of that is we're seeing a real rise in the mobilisation of the far right in Ireland. We've had direct provision centres set on fire. We've seen protests outside politicians' houses. You know, the kind of scenes that you would never have imagined in Ireland, which was always a very welcoming place. You know, Ireland, the Irish, we are ourselves a nation of immigrants. You know, we have immigrated and migrated all over the world, and it was always a very welcoming place. But the huge numbers are putting real strains on the infrastructure, and you can see then how those, you know, within those sort of far right agitators are pushing and using this influx of migrants to their own benefit, and it is causing real strains, especially in some very urban areas where resources, housing was already at a premium. Nobody, you know, young people can't afford to go on the property ladder in Ireland because of the price of houses, school places at a premium, doctor's appointments at a premium, and all of this then is being fed in with this massive influx. Ireland is a small place. It's not that Ireland is full, as some of these people keep saying, it's just that they haven't got the infrastructure, hasn't been able to keep up with the growth in the population.
Yes, and the Daily Telegraph saying Dublin believes migrants and refugees, mainly from Nigeria, are travelling from Britain to Northern Ireland before crossing the land border with the Republic, which is open as guaranteed by a UK-EU Brexit treaty. A little bit like Africans can land in one Central American country, which does not require Africans to have a visa, and that becomes another route into America. I'm going to move on if you don't mind. Yeah, you're right. Into the Weinstein sensation, front page of the Metro. Now accusers face a retrial ordeal because it was found that this rape case he was unfairly treated in this rape case.
That's right. I mean, I suppose that it's right if the appeal did find, as it has done, that he didn't get a fair trial for various reasons, including prosecutors were wrongly allowed to call witnesses whose claims were not included in the charges, and he was questioned in a prejudicial way. So it's right that it would come to retrial, but it does seem a little bit unfair on the women who were involved in the first trial, having to come back and testify and go through all this a second time, when it's unlikely to make any difference because he's going to remain in prison anyway for different charges of which he was convicted in 2022. He got 16 years in a separate case of rape in LA. So he's 72 years old now. This will take up until his mid-80s. He's unlikely to see daylight again as a free man. So it does seem like, although justice needs to be done in this way, it seems like unnecessary ordeal for the women involved in this case.
You know, you would think if you were one of those women, you'd already give your evidence, you have proven your point. You know, I think that, people believe them. The Me Too movement came from that. For this to have a retrial, he isn't going to be serving any more time in prison anyway. He's probably going to die in prison. And, if I was one of these women, would I want to put myself through that ordeal of a trial again, knowing at the end it's an academic exercise, because they have already, if you like, they have proved, they have been believed, and he is going to stay in jail because he's serving a sentence for another crime that he committed. He's has a 16-year jail term still to serve. It'll be interesting to see if those women, if all of them come forward and say, OK, let's go through another trial again. Because in the past, and I've covered numerous rape trials, I've found that when they go to retrial, in a lot of cases, the complainants and the victims in the case just say, look, I can't do this again. I've done it once and I just can't put myself through it again.
There's not much incentive, is there, knowing that he's in prison anyway?
Exactly, yeah.
Why put myself through it?
Let's take a look at the Daily Mail. Thieves hit shops 1,000 times a day, and attacks on staff double as well. So when will police start doing their job and protect long-suffering retailers? Suggestion from government is that everyone needs to be investigated now.
That's right. I mean, the problem with this is that low-level crime leads to greater criminality. It's been proven in a number of different instances.
In what sense?
Well, I'm thinking of Rudy Giuliani in the 90s, and where he cleaned up New York City by a broken window strategy, by which you clamp down on the small things, and then the big things become easier to police because of the sense of deterrent and the climate of enforcement. And if you're not doing that, then you begin to lose your grip on law enforcement. And we're seeing that with shoplifting, we're seeing that with the protests, the police failing to get a grip on the protests every weekend in London and elsewhere, and in other ways as well. I mean, burglaries aren't getting solved, crimes are going uninvestigated, let alone unsolved. And there's a general sense of lack of confidence in the police, I think, throughout the country. And headlines like this just emphasise that point. 1,000 times a day is a lot of times to hit a shop.
Many, many moons ago, I worked in retail as a very young woman, and I have seen people shoplifting and have decided, given the fact that I was being paid minimum wage, that I was certainly not going to put my life at risk to try and stop them. And you can see why people who work, especially for those large retailers, not small independent retailers, are saying, I'm going to turn a blind eye to this.
Did you call the cops? Did you call the cops back then?
No, I told the manager it's up to them to call the cops. I wasn't getting paid enough. It was outside my pay grade.
But more widely as well, these new crime statistics showed that 90% of all crimes go unsolved.
Yeah.
And I know cost of living, pressure on people's finances does lead to more crime. But we've seen with the shoplifting, it is criminal gangs paying people to go in and wipe clean shelves, haven't we? Taking large bags of it.
That kind of shoplifting is different from people. I mean, it saddens me when I go into a supermarket and see baby food with tags on it, because that is people stealing to try and feed their children, and that's a completely different thing from mass organised crime gangs shoplifting and making huge amounts of profits from it while damaging, the businesses in the meantime. If you address the cause of poverty, you would get rid of a lot of that sort of petty theft.
But I think there's a perception, I think, that it's a victimless crime, particularly when it's a big superstore like Tesco's or something. But actually, it's not. I mean, according to the Daily Mail, the crime surge is costing retailers $2 billion a year, adding £59 a year to household grocery bills. So we're picking up the tab for this shoplifting. So it does harm society.
OK, lots more still to come in the next part of our programme, including the story on the front of the eye, featuring a unique personalised vaccine using genetics to fight skin cancer. Talk about that breakthrough afterwards.
What we have developed is actually a portable cooling device, which you then attach a silicone head cap, who is intended to be used in the acute phase of injury to treat concussions. In fact, sports-related concussions are in fact unique, because athletes has this elevated brain temperature in general when doing sports. And it's well known to, when you have that, that's negative, and it increases the risk of a worsened outcome when suffering a concussion. So what Polar Cap then aims to do is to reduce that exercise-induced elevated brain temperature in the acute phase of injury. I was fortunate to play professional ice hockey for 17 years in Sweden, and with that comes injuries such as concussions. And me, myself, suffered maybe 5 during my career, and it was actually a concussion that ended my career. So that, in combination with my academic background being an engineer, I decided to see can potentially concussions be treated in the acute phase, and can you then lower the risks of these long-term consequences that unfortunately many athletes suffers. And that was the main reason for me joining. And I'm very happy now to see that after many years of clinical evidence gathering, we now see that actually you can lower that risk. Our goal is that this could be used and should be used by all sports that has a risk of suffering concussions or having concussions. And we're thrilled now that we have a collaboration with the United Rugby Championship, for instance, and we have a lot of rugby clubs also in Europe. And yes, I would say that why not take the chance of lowering the risk of long-term problems when suffering a concussion, regardless of which sport or wherever you get it. It's well known that being warmer when suffering a concussion increases the risk of a worsened outcome. So in that case, it's been quite obvious that it would most likely be beneficial to cool. And that was like the foundation when this was initiated in 2015, 2016.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the Press Preview. With me once again, the columnist for the Belfast Telegraph, Alison Morris, and the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons. Welcome back to both of you. Fascinating story, front page of the Eye and front of the Times as well. World's first jab to stop skin cancer. The Times puts it that patients with skin cancer can get customised jabs to target tumours up the top there. This is really interesting, isn't it?
It's really fascinating. It's the world's first personalised vaccine. So what happens is you have your surgery for a melanoma, which is often the main symptom is a mole that goes deformed. So you have your surgery, and after that, they would give you a vaccine that's custom made for each patient, and it trains your immune system to recognise the unique mutations on the surface of your tumours and hunts down those rogue cells that are left. So it's really a massive development. One wonders whether a similar kind of personalised approach could be taken with other cancers as well.
Well, the suggestion is the other cancers would be lung cancer, bladder cancer and kidney cancer, which is a game changer for many of those with it. They say that a final phase 3 trial has been launched and led by University College London Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. You know, the point, as you say, that the immune system will then tell the body to hunt down cancer cells and prevent these deadly diseases coming back, first of all with melanoma, would be truly heartwarming to people, wouldn't it?
And the treatment for these type of cancers is so harsh, and you know it takes such a lot out of people who are going, and I know people who have been through those sort of cancer treatments. It's very debilitating, and to think that if something like this could come along that could remove the need for that very invasive treatment to try and save lives, it really would be a game changer. And as someone who abused my very Irish skin in my teenage years, it is something that I'm really cautious of now. I go out practically in a wetsuit and factor 50 from head to toe, but I didn't always, and it's something I'm so concerned about, given the fact that I know so many people who are now in later life suffering from those kind of skin cancers.
Absolutely. It is an mRNA cancer jab for melanoma. Personalised cancer vaccines are a new field of medicine, and the mRNA technology is the same as in the COVID jabs. So, interesting development, certainly. Moving on to, I've completely forgotten where we're going. Front page of the Times, same with the Times, actually. There we go, that's probably why. This story down the bottom, MI5 checks for academics to curb the threat from China, plan to protect cutting-edge research and foil foreign spies after talks with vice-chancellors. Because R&D is a really big part of this, isn't it, obviously, as well? That's right. I mean, it reminds me, the Jewish Chronicle last year did a story where we exposed collaborations between academics in Britain and Iranians on cutting-edge drone research, and the Prime Minister launched an investigation into that, which had yet to report, but we're looking forward to the results of that. This is very, very similar, but it's Chinese. And an MI5 have requested for tighter vetting procedures for academics and also the ability to vet collaborations with other states, particularly China, but Iran, I think, would be in the picture as well, to prevent our secrets and our cutting-edge technology from being shared with authoritarian and hostile regimes. So it just goes to show that the threat is pretty great, and universities have traditionally been a soft target for hostile regimes for a long time, and it feels to me like a case of better late than never. Yes, and I suppose with all the defence focus this week, that actually espionage, classic espionage and cyber attacks are a really central part of the defence of the nation, isn't it? Should we go to the inside pages of the Metro now, Alison? Will's talking jokes on the sort of around the subject of mental health to children.
Yeah, and it is quite a light-hearted story, and it's, he went to visit this school. This young guy had sent
Prince
him
William, I should say.
Prince William had this young student had sent Prince William a letter, and he has responded by attending his school. But the message behind it is actually, it's quite a serious message, and the fact that the school is doing training with young men. This am I manly enough? And the idea that women cry and that men sort of toughen up. And the school is doing this lovely, I think, scheme with these young children, teaching them this and going through this mental health work. And it was not lovely for them then that Prince William, who I know has spoken quite a lot about his own mental health after his mother died. I couldn't tell that joke because I don't understand it.
Oh, really?
I did read it and I thought, how's that meant to be?
Have you got it?
Maybe you had to be there.
Okay,
maybe you had to be there.
Knock, knock.
Yeah.
Who's there? Interrupting cow.
Then I go, interrupting cow.
Yeah, interrupt you.
Yeah,
So he has a cow.
Interrupt you. Do you get it now?
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely a had to be there situation. Yeah,
I like that one. Alison and Jake, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you for more, obviously, in the 11. Plenty more to talk about. Let's take a look at the weather now. Well, the current northerly flow will clear the skies with a fairly widespread frost expected, but rain in the southwest will eventually bring more unsettled conditions to much of the country, along with milder air. From North Wales northward, temperatures will fall low enough for both an air and a grass frost in rural areas. It'll be mostly dry for these parts, although there will be a few coastal showers. Southern parts of England will be largely cloudy, with showery outbreaks of rain in the southwest and southeast. Through the morning, that rain will turn heavy enough to deliver an inch or so of rainfall to Devon and Cornwall. Rain will threaten southernmost counties through the day. For the rest of the country, a brisk, bright early start will give way to cloudy conditions. Coastal showers will spread westward through the day. It'll be cool once again, with temperatures ranging from 12 or 13 to single figures. We need a bit of warmth, don't we? And a day with no rain. Anyway, Sky News at 11 is next. Our press preview continues, the very latest on the ructions in Scottish politics. Back in just a moment.